have talked about, well, where can I go just for a simple hike if I'm just a beginning hiker? So I'm going to turn it over to my former classmate, Leslie Knight, to talk about, hikes that may be closer than you think. Okay.
Okay. Hey, so hi everybody. I've been reading the chat and just wanted to say I love all the hikes everybody's done up in the mountains and think they're wonderful. And I know everybody's wondering what to do around here, especially in the pandemic. I've really been enjoying Carolina North Forest. I know some of us who went to law school, like Gray and I were talking, and someone must have put that slide up there. Carolina North Forest, some of us don't even know about, but there's several entrances. The entrance that's probably, the easiest, actually this isn't the map, but anyway, the Unity Center, yeah, the next one, here we go. Yeah, there's the Unity Center of Peace off of Sewell School Road, and you can go in there and there's a really wide path. You can have 2 people abreast with 6 feet even, and a dog or 2. And there's also a labyrinth that's behind this church that I rarely see 2 people, so I haven't seen any side-by-side people there. So there's a huge trail that hooks onto Bowling Creek. There's bicycle loops for Pumpkin and Wormhole, but there's also walking trails that have a labyrinth. It's a very spiritually exciting space. So that's one thing. It's all flat. Again, if you like the mountains, which I do, this is still fun because it's close to Chapel Hill. The other trail that's nearby, I'm trying to do a Durham one here. There are a bunch of trails at the Eno River. A lot of people have done this. What I like about the Eno, though, is you can also swim, or you can wade, or you can put in tubes. So a couple of weekends ago, some of us went and put in some tubes. There's a Fuse Ford section at the end of Coal Mill Road, and I think this shows all the entrances. But Fuse Ford is a little crowded, so I suggest going early morning. But you can put in, if the water's high enough, you can put in a tube. We've got a couple tubes and a blow-up kayak that you can use in your car. You can carry things on your back. You can walk. The other entrance is where the Eno Festival is in the summer, the West Point on the Eno. They have a new trail there and a new path over the sewer that very few people know about. And it's a Senate's Hole you can put in and take your tube down from there. And very few people do it. And by the way, I'm happy for anybody to message me after this about, there's other entrances to the Eno. One's on Continental Drive near Willow Haven. There's a swimming hole there that I went with a friend just last weekend. I know 2 weekends ago. Then there's Airmount, Poets Walk. Actually, I see somebody might just be adding that. There's and the river walk in Hillsborough, but you can't really swim from there. In fact, it's not allowed. Then I think the one other place you want to swim, now I'm going to hit Raleigh, but this is really sketchy. I mean, a sketch. Falls Lake, Beaver Dam access. You can find many places to put in tubes, kayaks. The Beaver Dam access, if you go into the middle of the lake, it's not too far and it's shallow. There's a little island, and you maybe, I'm about 5'4" and I can stand. So you can paddle out, and then you can stop in the middle. Just be sure your fanny pack has waterproofing. This here that you're looking at, this is Fuse Ford. What I love about Fuse Ford is you can walk out on the rocks. If you, for folks who are talking about easy hikes, it looks slippery, but it's actually not. You can dangle your toes. You don't have to swim, but if you want to, you can jump on in. Since we don't have much time, I'm not going to talk more, but I wondered if anybody had any questions that I could answer about local hikes, either here or feel free to message me. Thanks.
Nick, could you go to Leslie's last slide? I do want to highlight, if you can, pull that the next slide up on Leslie's. People were talked about accessible hikes. Here's a map of all the state parks in North Carolina. almost all of them have hiking trails, and they're near our urban areas. So Crowder's Mountain's a great destination near Charlotte, Hanging Rock and Pilot Mountain near Winston-Salem. Leslie's talked about hikes in the Triangle area. So, it's, while it's great to do the more exotic, and we're getting ready to, speaking of exotic, Henry, you're on deck. But this is a great map, and Leslie will be happy to answer your questions in the chat about some of the local hikes. And Leslie, thank you for giving us a different perspective in the middle of the state.
Sure thing.
So we've talked about the western part of the hikes, and then we've talked western part of the state, and then the Piedmont Triangle area. And now we will probably go to the most exotic location in the far east, and the hike that, while everyone's been up grandfather, or most everyone, this is one that I'm betting that most folks have not done. So Henry, if you'll unmute yourself, and Nick, if you can get Henry's slides teed up, I'll turn it over to Henry.
Thanks, Gray. I appreciate that. I'm very honored to be among this great group of folks and folks watching in, and as well too. I have a special connection to Yellow Mountain too. I won't belabor it, but my parents, along with Jay's parents and others, were some of the first home builders on the mountain. And so I've grown up with Jay in the mountains and had that opportunity. We reconnected again at Carolina when we were there. So I could go on and on about that area too, but I will second and third that motion that it is a wonderful place to be if you want to go hiking in the mountains. What I want to talk about is something that is a challenge that I undertook beginning about the end of 2016. I had pretty much blown out. You can see my knee brace on one knee there in the first slide on the left side. I had pretty much blown out my knees and ankles and had a toe fuse that had to be done because I had been running for so many years, putting all that pounding, on my lower extremities. So along with a couple of time to time, I took it upon myself to find this challenge that a buddy of mine told me about, where it's through a site called Peak Baggers, which is like what it sounds. You try to climb as many peaks as you can in different areas. And one of the challenges is to do all counties in a particular state. Of course, I chose North Carolina. It's my home state. I live in the middle part of the state in Charlotte, actually just north in Huntersville. And so some of these peaks, like you've heard in the other stories that have been told today, some have been challenging, some were not as challenging. This was probably the most, and let me identify it first. This is the Pasquotank County High Point. So you are just shy of the Virginia line up in the Great Dismal Swamp in the far northeastern part of North Carolina. This was one of the last of my 100 to climb, quote unquote, and Gray's right. It was a 6-foot elevation gain over a period of about 9 miles. So that road that you're seeing there on the left was the first part of our hike. A buddy of mine, Charlie Furr, who may be listening in today, great hiker, was kind enough to go with me on this. This is the middle of December in the Great Dismal Swamp, so we were trying to avoid the snakes, the bugs, as much foliage as possible that would prevent us from getting to this peak, quote unquote. But the other thing is there's really no map to this place. Most of the posts that I followed or information I got on the internet to this high point came from people who just literally went out and did it using a GPS, a compass, and sometimes just good horse sense about where the highest ground was. So that is, I believe, the back of my bike. We had to bike in 8 miles on a canal road. To your left and to your right are 10 and 8 feet of water, respectively. So you didn't want to stray too far away from that area right there. We were told by one person we did actually talk to that the way to the trailhead was to look for a piece of pink tape attached to a branch. you'll see that on the right side of your screen. That is the trailhead, followed by some water right behind it. So our challenge was really, it was as much logistical as it was physically challenging. We had to take machetes because of the amount of, you can see there, the amount of, even in December, the amount of understory and other things we had to go through. So that's Charlie there in front of me. I'm taking a picture of him. It's about a mile in from the canal road, but I couldn't find my path to show you the path I took to get there, but it was almost like a bad bowl of spaghetti. I mean, we were all over the place, crisscrossing, trying to get around water, trying to get around trees, trying to get around things that looked a little dangerous. And we found what you see on the right, which is the actual high point of Pasquotank County at 16 feet. It's one of the lowest high points in the state. And once we reached that, we also, if you could show the next slide, Nick, that's me showing off a little bit there with the machetes, but it turns from a cypress swamp, which many of you have seen if you've been in that part of the state or even in the southeastern part of the state. It turns into this unique deciduous forest with these tremendous poplar, oak, trees that you wouldn't typically see in a swamp. So this is a very interesting area historically as well, and that was another reason we wanted to go. This started out as a refuge for Native Americans when the colonists came, and we're chasing them out of their natural areas where they lived. They would always go here if they needed a breather, a place to gather, a place to meet. Later on, it was a stop on the Underground Railroad between New Bern and Norfolk, or in that area. And more recently, what we had been told by folks who live down there is it's where you go to hide if you've committed crimes and you haven't been locked up yet. We didn't see any evidence of that. We did see, obviously, some beautiful scenery. To your left, there is one of the tallest trees that we saw in the swamp. All of this, of course, is original growth forest. To the right, it was an interesting tree we found where people had actually been carving and doing actually a little bit of painting there. There's a gentleman, and I can't remember his name, who is an archaeologist who's actually looking at this area and has done some digging in there. But you can see where there were areas where they had water holes, where they had primitive cabins, and so forth. All that is essentially gone. So if you can go to the next slide there, after this one, that was our attempted out, the one before that, sorry. That was our attempt to get out initially. That is about 3.5 feet deep of just black muck, for lack of a better term. We skipped around it. You can kind of see Charlie in the top left. He got around it better than I did, but we were able to hopscotch and find areas of dry ground to get out. Obviously, we had to ride our bikes. So it was a 16-mile bike ride, about probably 3 miles of poking around in this stuff to find that high point. It took us from 6:30 in the morning until about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So quite a large amount of time for not, and that's the end of it right there at the canal road, looking down the other direction. But at any rate, it was a great adventure for us. We were very happy to be a part of that and be part of my 100 high points. Excuse me. Just want to say thanks again to everybody that's taken part here. I feel very honored to be part of this group today.
Great. Can I butt in? How many people have done this?
I'm sorry, what? I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry.
How many people have done this here?
The most I could find on the internet is four people that have claimed to have reached the high point of Pasquotank County. So I'm one of the four.
That's a more exclusive group than the Beyond South Beyond 6,000, or even those that have climbed Denali and Whitney and Rainier and the other 47 peaks like Woody. We are at 6:30. I love Trip Helm's question about the quicksand that we grew up worrying about. Yep, I think Henry found where that location was. Again, I would highlight the state parks. I realize the sun, one thing about being outside, that the sun's probably shifting through the trees, so you may not be able to see me well. But the map of the state parks, is where I think if you're starting out hiking, some of the questions earlier, that you can't do better than the wonderful state park system. And we're very fortunate to have that in the state of North Carolina. Lee, if there's anyone's got a burning question that we have not asked, we'll leave this on up for a minute. Type your question into the chat before we close out the program, and excuse Justice Irvin. Any other comments of the panelists about the other trails? I think Henry gets the prize for being most unique, which I appreciate. Woody gets the prize for the most treacherous story, especially if you couple it with Jimmy's dead body story up on Roan. Jay, thank you for joining us. It's truly an honor to have you on this call. I've enjoyed reading your book. We read it, Jimmy and I are in the same book club. We read it in our book club, and again, it's an honor to have you. And thank you for all you're doing for conservation efforts here in the state of North Carolina. We do have several candidates with us that have joined us. Some of the colleagues that are running with me for seats on the Court of Appeals. I see Reuben Young on the screen. Reuben, do you want to wave? I don't think we can unmute you, but Reuben's on the line. I know Chris Brooks was on the line earlier. There's Chris waving. He's on the second screen. Thank you, Chris, for joining us very, very much. And I know Laura Cubbage was on earlier. Laura, she's on my third set. If you can wave, these are all candidates for the North Carolina Court of Appeals, and I thank them for joining me on this call. Any other questions? Well, thank you all for listening to the panel and learning maybe a little bit more about our great state. Thank you for our panelists, Leslie, Jimmy, Woody, Henry. I enjoyed hearing your story. And John, I enjoyed hearing your stories. I've enjoyed hiking with you. I've enjoyed getting to know you over the years, and I'm honored to have you on this program. So I appreciate it. So I'm going to, at this point, we're going to pause about 30 seconds. And I want to let Jimmy exit the call. Thank you, Jimmy, for joining us. Appreciate it. Give my regards to Mary and your family.
Thanks for having me.
While we're waiting 30 seconds, I'll have Nick pull up a picture I'm particularly proud of. Now, I have not climbed Denali like Woody has. I'm not a mountaineer. I'm not a climber. But but I love traveling. And last year, this was taken 12 months and about 2 weeks ago. This is a picture of Denali in Alaska. And if you have been to Denali, I don't know what the conditions were, Woody, when you summited it to the peak, but it is very rare that it's like this. They say about 1 or 2 days a month in the summertime. This is actually a picture of Denali. So if you look really closely with a magnifying glass, you can see Woody up there, or imagine Woody up there on top. But this was a picture that we took on a family vacation to Denali last year. So I think that Jimmy is off the program, which he needs to be. And again, thank you for everyone who have stayed on the program. I appreciate it. Most of you, many of you, I know, I see a lot of familiar names on the screen. If you don't know me, I'll take just a minute to introduce myself. I was born outside of Hickory, North Carolina, and I've lived my entire life in North Carolina. I attended Wake Forest undergraduate, but then you've heard that Leslie and I were in law school together at UNC Chapel Hill. I clerked for Jimmy's father. You heard me say that. My first year after law school on the Fourth Circuit. And have practiced for 30 years since then in the Raleigh area. I've been with large firms, small firms. I actually hung out my shingle for a few years and had my own firm, but am now back with another large firm, Fox Rothschild, where I'm practice group leader for our energy and natural resources practice nationally. I do believe that my experience over 30 years practicing law in large firms and small, with clients and cases all over our state, and I've been very fortunate to have literally cases from Macon County to Elizabeth City to Brunswick County and pretty much every place in between, has prepared me now to run for the Court of Appeals. You know from the fact that I've organized a Zoom program that I love the outdoors. My father was an avid outdoorsman. He was a high school science teacher and principal, and he was going to try to log on. I don't know if my dad is on the line, but if he is, he could wave. But he was going to try to log on. He was a school principal and an avid outdoorsman. Taught me growing up fishing and hunting outdoors with him. And it's also, and he taught me really a love of nature, which has led to the going to the Outward Bound School and hiking. And that was something my wife Barbara and I also had in common when we met. She attended Cornell University as an undergraduate and spent a lot of time hiking in the Finger Lakes region of New York. When we first met and started dating, she actually had more hiking and camping equipment than I did. And one of our first camping trips was actually a two-person tent on Cape Lookout. We both love to travel. You saw the picture a few moments ago of Mount Rainier. You saw maybe the T-shirt of me there at on top of Hawksbill. We did not summit the Matterhorn. I don't want anyone to have that delusion. But we did a lot of hiking in Switzerland with Zermatt being our base. We've traveled to the Galapagos. We've spent a week hiking in the Bitterroot Mountains in Montana. So we enjoy traveling, enjoy being outdoors. For someone who's had a law practice for 30 years, you might ask, well, why am I giving up that law practice and running for judge? Many of you who have been active in conservation efforts, environmental efforts, and I'm looking at the screen at you, Jay Lucy, know what it's like to be a part of something larger than yourself. It's one thing to enjoy hiking, but to really be in a conservation effort to preserve the great outdoors, and you can really feel as a part of something larger than yourself. Likewise, I've practiced law and I've appeared in front of some great judges. I've had great cases, but this was an opportunity for me to feel like here's an opportunity for me to give back to the state. When I was president of the Wake County Bar Association, I actually wrote a column called A Call to Public Service, in which I wrote that I believe that we as lawyers should use our intellect, our experience, and our skills to realize the dreams that first led us to law school, not to serve ourselves and our own personal gain, but to serve the public at large and to improve the communities in which we work and live. That was something I have felt for a long time, and I've been fortunate to be involved in a lot of bar association work, and many of you know me from that. That's how John Mason and I met, was at the bar association meetings. That's how Woody and I met. But here was an opportunity for me to give back to the state by running for public office. Judge Sam J. Irvin III used to tell his clerks in chambers that legal cases are about real people with real problems to be decided, and the decisions have real consequences. I've seen that throughout my career as a lawyer, and I've just seen it as a citizen and North Carolinian. I believe that it's essential that we have fair, impartial, and independent judges. And I think it's important to have judges who understand the context of the disputes before them. It's not about abstract legal theories. It cannot be about political ideology or special interest. It's about the rule of law. And we need judges, I believe, who understand our state, its rural areas, its small towns like I grew up, its cities, its diverse population, who understand our state's history and understand, the challenges that our state and its citizens face. And some of those challenges have been highlighted by the events of 2020. The problem I have, especially in a pandemic, is how do I get my name out? The reality is that most folks have no idea who is running for judge when they go to mark their ballot. Now, it's a lot of times we as lawyers get asked a week or two before the election, well, who should I vote for? Who do you know? But especially this year, when we can't hold campaign events, we can't go around meeting folks at fundraisers, at law offices, at at meetings like Sierra Club and others, how do they know who we are? And if they don't know us, how do they know to vote for us on election day? So I hope that this event is some way that those of you who have not met me before, and there are some names that I don't recognize on the screen, that this is a way that you get to know a little bit more about me. If you've enjoyed this program, I would appreciate your spreading the word to your friends and your family and your colleagues. Have them make up their own mind. On the chat, I think Nick's going to put up my campaign website and direct folks, if you want to learn more about me, you can go to my website, styersforjudge.com. If you, in this day and age where we are all kind of trapped indoors and are able to stay in front of a screen, I've recorded some of the snippets of my standard stump speech I would have otherwise given at these events, and I've put them on a YouTube channel. So if you were to go to YouTube and type in Styers for Judge, you can see some of my views on my judicial philosophy, why I'm running, what being a judge means to me, some of the lessons that Jimmy's father taught me when I was clerking for him on the Fourth Circuit. And again, if you're, I wish that we were in an age in which we could rely upon public financing, but that's not where we are at this point in our state. We did have that option, but no longer. So we have to raise funds as well for our campaigns. So, you know, if you are able and willing, I understand that the COVID-19 virus has made it difficult for folks. I'll probably following up with you and asking you if you would be willing to make a donation to my campaign, and I would really appreciate that. It's hard, and again, I see a lot of folks on the screen who have already made contributions, and I thank you. I'm looking at half a dozen folks on the screen right in front of me. And again, I could not run a campaign without your support, and I really do appreciate that. And I know I speak for Ruben and for Chris and for Laura and for Tricia Shields, and to say, you know, it's a difficult year to run for public office, and it's a difficult year to run for judge. So again, I am honored that you have spent now almost an hour and 15 minutes with us. If you would like to unmute yourself. I don't know, Nick, if that's, you've got everyone muted, which is what was necessary to run a program like this. And I think it's been pretty successful. I did not, you know, we were kind of winging it. I actually called one of the speakers out of order and they improvised and did pretty well. I've had a good time. I've had fun. It's good getting together with friends. I see Catherine giving me a thumbs up. I know Jean Spooner was on this, is on the call still. Shout out to Jean and the work that she does with the Friends of Umstead Park. You know, it's an organization that I've had a chance to get to know well. Umstead Park is the state park closest to where I live, and I am either hiking or mountain biking in Umstead, you know, almost monthly for sure, and more often in the summertime. So, Jean, thank you for your work and the Umstead Park. Between Raleigh and Durham and Chapel Hill being so accessible to so many people and having such great trails. Again, anyone have any questions for me? This is an opportunity we can do a little bit as a town hall, and I'm happy to stay on the line. I do know that those in the Triangle Sierra Club have another meeting that they're going to go to at 7 o'clock for their pack. So I do know that. So if you've got questions and if you can unmute yourself, Nick, is that a capability? Is that the possibility?
Yes, everyone should be able to unmute themselves now.
If you've got a question for me, if you want to raise your hand, I'll try to recognize you. We've still got 30 folks on the call. I really appreciate it. John, good seeing you. John Corzin. He also clerked for Jimmy's father. I interviewed John when he was coming through and interviewing. And so it's good to see John on the line this afternoon.
Great to see you, Gray. You were a key to my career getting started, so I really appreciate it. And great event today. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it. I talked about the hiking in the Bitterroot Mountains in Montana. I know she's not on the camera, but Giselle Rankin is on the phone. Giselle worked at the Utilities Commission on the public staff when Jimmy was a commissioner, and Giselle and her husband Lawson went on with us on that trip to the Bitterroots and Montana with us. And I know they are big hikers as well, and I'm glad. And Chuck Rowe, who's been so active in Charlotte in a lot of conservation groups, the Botanical Gardens, and glad to see Chuck on the line with us. It's good to see friends. Giselle, thank you for turning on your camera. I appreciate that. You know, you were talking about John, me helping your career. Catherine Cummers on the phone, on the line, and I made the comment. Every case I've argued at the Court of Appeals, and I've argued a lot of them. Those that Catherine have helped me write on. I have an undefeated record. She's the greatest brief writer I've ever had, and miss her severely. But glad that Catherine was able to log on, and glad
You're too kind.
Thank you, Catherine. Well, again, thank you so much. I saw that Heidi, you wanted me to reach out to you. I will see if we can capture some of your discussion on chat. Again, shoot me an email. If you would like to learn more and ask questions of me specifically, my email address is steyerjudge@gmail.com. And I'm glad to answer your emails. Again, if you want to follow our campaign on Facebook, on Twitter, and again, share the videos on the Cyrus for Judge channel on YouTube, and share the website. That's the only way people are going to know who to vote for on Election Day.
So just go to I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt you. You said steyerforjudge@gmail.com.
Yes, Nick just put that email address up.
Okay, great, thank you.
So send me an email. I'll be glad to answer. I hope you've had a good time. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it really has been a good time. I really enjoy listening to your stories. Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi, and learn about some new trails. I've got to go to Mount Cameron, that fire station, and that view that is now high on my list, and one that I was not familiar with. I have not hiked nearly as much west of Asheville as I have in that area. And John's hiking buddy is on the screen. John, thank you for sharing your hiking buddy with us. He's adorable. Thank you. And I may see you at the PAC meeting very shortly. Again, thank you for coming. Thank you for participating. I hope you had fun. Thank you for your support of this event. Help spread the word and have a great evening. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.